Hi guys, Anna Warber here, and today we are going to be starting the next book in our 17 Spooky Stories dramatic reading series, counting down to Halloween stuff. And we're going to be reading Encyclopedia Brown's Book of Wacky Cars by Donald J. Sloboy, I guess is how you pronounce that. I don't know. Okay. Introduction. Every year in July, the town of Idaville auctions off unclaimed and unwanted property. Bikes, televisions, office furniture, boats, and even cars are put up for sale. On the day of the auction, Encyclopedia and his junior partner, Sally Kimball, closed the Brown Detective Agency early. They biked to the police garage on 3rd Street to say hello to goodbyes. A crowd of grown-ups and children was already there. Sally nodded to two used police cars parked along the rear wall. Who would buy an old police car? She wondered. Taxicab companies in large cities, Encyclopedia replied. A small-town police car in good condition is a prize fine. Why? Sally said. Police cars are tough. They're equipped with everything heavy duty, including frames, bikes, tires, brakes, tires, and shock absorbers, Encyclopedia replied. Naturally, before they become taxicabs, a few changes have to be made, such as, "Hey, do you see that fishing trophy?" A voice. "Hey, did you see the fishing trophy?" The voice interrupted. It was Monroe Burnside. Monroe collected trophies. He didn't win them. He just collected them. Encyclopedia looked where Monroe pointed. On a roll-top desk nearby was a white ashtray with a tiny figure of a fisherman on the rim. The words "Bone Fishing Tournament, First Place, 1968" were printed on the base. "If it goes for less than $1, I have a chance to own it," Monroe said. "Isn't it beautiful?" "It's lovely," Sally agreed in a strained tone. "Don't worry, you'll get it." "I'm not so sure," Monroe said gravely. "Conaway Tinchell is here. He's crazy about fishing. He'd bid on a wet line." Monroe was right. Conaway thought about fishing more than anything else. Whenever he turned on a drinking fountain at school, he cried, "There she blows!" Excuse me. Encyclopedia and Sally wished Monroe good luck and walked toward the used police cars. Sally said, "Oh boy, is that figure of a fisherman ever ugly. It's enough to make a person give up fishing. Who'd want an ashtray besides Monroe and Conaway?" "Someone who wants to give up smoking," Encyclopedia suggested. Several men were examining the police cars. They looked under the hood, peering at the upholstery, and checked the mileage. The detectives joined them. Soon afterward, the auctioneer called, "All right, folks, we're ready to start." The crowd moved to the front of the garage. The auctioneer, a tall, thin man, stood behind a high table for a couple of minutes. He talked about the fine condition of all the items on sale. Then he opened the binding. He had sold 9 cars, 5 file cabinets, and a rubber lifeboat when Monroe Burnside appeared beside Encyclopedia. "Come quickly," Monroe urged. Encyclopedia motioned to Sally. The detectives followed Monroe behind the 2 police cars at the back of the garage. Conway Tinsel was there. He was holding the ashtray with the figure of the fisherman. "I caught him trying to steal it," Monroe said. "Don't listen to him, Encyclopedia," Conway blurted out. "He's running on empty. I caught him trying to get out the window with it." "Liar!" exclaimed Monroe. "If people needed a license to tell the truth, you'd have to ask for a learner's permit." "Hold on, both of you," Encyclopedia said. "You'll each have a chance to tell your story. First, Monroe. A couple of minutes ago, I started for the restroom. Monroe said. "As I passed on the far side of the two police cars, I heard a noise. Conway was sneaking out of the back door of the first car with the ashtray in his hand, so I followed him. He went to the rear exit of the garage and tried to get away. I stopped him and ran to get you, Encyclopedia." Encyclopedia turned to Conway. "What do you have to say?" "I was never in the police car," Conway said. "I was walking back toward the restroom when I saw Monroe crouched between one of the cars and the back wall. He was carrying the ashtray. But when he saw me, he shoved it into my hands and asked me to hold it a minute. Then he ran and got you." "Let's walk a bit," Encyclopedia said to Sally. The detectives moved off until they were out of earshot of Monroe and Conway. "Who do you think tried to steal the ashtray?" Encyclopedia asked. "I don't know," Sally said. "Monroe could be trying to frame Conway. Conway could be trying to frame Monroe. Either way, either could have swiped the ashtray when no one was looking." "And hidden in or between the police car." "And hidden in or between the police car," Encyclopedia said. "When the auction began, everyone was facing the other way. That's when the thief tried to run for the rear exit." "But that doesn't tell us which one is the thief," Sally said. "Monroe or Conway?" "If we only had a clue," Encyclopedia murmured thoughtfully. "What was Conway doing in the police car?" Sally said. "It doesn't make sense unless he hid in the car till he thought the coast was clear. He might have escaped with the ashtray, except that Monroe saw him." Sally shook her head, puzzled. "Of course, Monroe could be lying and Conway could be telling the truth." "Of course, Monroe could be lying and Conway could be telling the truth," she went on. "Monroe could be the thief, or Conway could be the thief. Good heavens, I can't spot a single clue." Encyclopedia's face lit up. "That's it! That's the answer! The clue is what's missing." "Encyclopedia, stop it. Who's guilty? Monroe or Conway?" Encyclopedia told her. Sally gasped. She stared at the two police cars. "Why didn't I see that? Golly, Encyclopedia, you ought to start a collection of odd things about cars. Funny things." "I already have," Encyclopedia said. After the auction, the detectives returned to Encyclopedia's garage, home of the Brown Detective Agency. On the back wall were shelves with several scrapbooks. Sally had already seen a few of them. The collections of wacky crimes, wacky spies, wacky sports, and wacky animals. Encyclopedia passed over these and took down a brown scrapbook he laid on the desk. "My collection of true wacky stories about cars," he said proudly. Sally opened the scrapbook eagerly and began to read. Chapter 1. Wacky Cars. "Down in front!" Advertisements termed the Duck the newest, latest, best thing ever produced in the auto line. What it produced was a clunk. It laid the biggest egg of any car ever offered to the American public. Believe it or not, the driver sat in the rear where the pedals and steering wheel were located. Passengers sat on folding seats in front of him and blocked his view of the road. The Duck was built in 1913 by the Jackson Motor Company of Jackson, Michigan. Practical features weren't a Jackson specialty. Its 1910 Rambler Surrey had headlights that doubled as bumpers. "That's one big pizza car." The biggest car ever manufactured for personal use was the Buick Royal. It weighed 7,000 pounds, more than twice the weight of the average American car. And it was as long as your living room, if your living room is 20 to 22 feet long. The Royal was built in France by an Italian, Ettore Arcor Isidoro Bugatti. Between 1927 and 1933, the chassis sold for around $25,000. Each body was different, being built to the customer's wishes, and cost up to $20,000 extra. The cars were works of art. With the passing years, they become more and more valuable. Oh my, did they ever. On June 27, 1986, a 1931 Pagani Royal Berline de Voyage was sold in Reno, Nevada for $6.7 million, the highest price ever paid at auction for an automobile. "I was happy to buy it for less than $10 million, said the winning bidder, Jerry J. Moore, 58, a Houston shopping center developer. Before the auction, he had called the Bugatti a very ugly car, but ugly enough to be unusual. His yellow and black hunk of iron and wood, with its convertible roofed chauffeur compartment, is long on luxury and short on economy. The 300 horsepower and 778 cubic inch straight 8 engine surplus a gallon of gas every 6 miles and sounded like an old diesel truck. And the car cost $42,000 new, and once was resold for $1,500. Probably no more than 8 Bugatti Royals were made. Besides, Moore's 5 others still existed. But if you long to be the first on your street to own one, you're in for a disappointment. The others are locked in museums and private collections. I don't think there will be another one available for the next 200 years, said Moore, and it only ran on Union oil. The city of Hartford, Michigan, had a police car that shared a trait with many humans. It didn't like to work on Saturdays and Sundays. The car was a 1982 Plymouth, and before it was more than a few weeks old, it had already been to the repair shop 8 times to be treated for weekend blahs. You can be driving down the road and the engine stop running without any warning, said a city official. The oddest thing is that it only happens on weekends. It doesn't like to work overtime. He wasn't doing too well. Once upon a time, a man known simply as Dr. Bischoff lived in Kiel, Germany. Daily he gazed upon the waters of the Baltic. Out of such gazing came the inspiration to invent a ship, not an ocean liner, of which there were plenty, but a desert liner. By 1927, plans for the Ship of the Desert were completed. It would be 4 stories tall, 80 yards long, and weigh 350 tons. Driven by a 200 horsepower ship's engine, it would plow the billowy wastes of the Sahara on wheels, 15 yards in